All right, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully you can hear me coming through. So if somebody in the chat room can just post a comment to say you can hear me, that would be fantastic. And also let me know that there's no kind of feedback. You're not hearing me twice, because I am trying a different method tonight with my headphones in. So if you could let me know in the chat that you can hear me, that would be fantastic. Brian, got your message. Paul, thank you. Anthony, Kirsty, Chuck, fantastic. Thank you very much. That's great, Eric. Thank you for the loud and clear 5 out of 5. I think it's probably just worth saying that if you are now watching this after it's been live, so if you're not watching this at 8 p.m. UK time on Friday the 13th, who on earth does a live broadcast on the 13th anyway, then feel free to jump forward in the countdown. You do not need to keep watching that. So yeah, jump forward. Otherwise, everybody, it looks like we'll be kicking off in 2 minutes and 44 seconds. Mark Wood, you might want to, you might really mean that by the end of this. Who knows? Ian, that's a definite no. And after the last 2 weeks I've had with all the technicals with this stuff, I ain't going to go anywhere near it. Hello everybody. Right, hopefully I've pressed the mic so you should be able to hear me. It's all looking good on the control room. But listen, again, thank you so much for joining me this evening on YouTube. I've not done one of these for a while. I've been really looking forward to it. But if you've been following me on social media and on the new site, it works. You'll know why I've probably not done one of these for quite a while. My attention has been drawn elsewhere. But listen, thank you so much. I can see we've got plenty of people all over the place. We've got my mate Chuck over in Hawaii. Chuck is here, and I think it's just after 9 in the morning. So thank you for joining us, Chuck. That sounds nice. Thanks for joining us, Chuck. But listen, today we're going to go through half an hour's worth of stuff, maximum I would suggest. Going to go through some lighting effects stuff. But first of all, before we kind of dive into that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that has commented about the new website. I'm not sponsored or any way connected to Squarespace whatsoever. But my God, am I happy that I've moved over to them, because it has just I can now sleep easy at night. It is absolutely brilliant how easy it's been to set up and work. And obviously as a photographer, as a creative, if you want to call that creative, or content creator, you don't want to have your attention pulled aside to deal with stuff like websites. You really don't. You need to be concentrating on what you should be doing, which is creating new pictures and content. So, and my website was taking me away from that. So thankfully, that isn't the case anymore. But yes, we are going to go through some lighting effects. I've got my running order just here. I guess we could just kind of kick off. In fact, first of all, for those of you who have no idea, let me just show you the little trailer I put together for the lighting effects tutorial, which is a new tutorial I've got coming out, and I've not done one for a while, and I'm genuinely really happy with this. Let me just play the promo, then we'll dive into a tutorial. Hi, I'm Glyn Jewis, and this is my Photoshop lighting effects course. All right, now my friend Brian's just posted, do I only have one jumper? Brian, this is all about continuity, all right? Continuity. However, I did get this ordered and they sent me 2. There you go. Listen, all right, let's go dive in. Now, talking to Brian, I want to show you a tutorial now, which is actually involving Brian's car, this incredible Ford Mustang. I want to show you a technique that I came up with for creating headlights on the car, so it makes it look as if the headlights are on, but going it a little bit further by making it look as if the headlights are also kind of lighting up the ground in front. So let me just dive into Photoshop and show you this technique now, which is one of the ones in the new tutorial. So in this technique, I want to show you how we can use the lens flare filter to make it appear as if a vehicle's headlights are turned on. Now, the lens flare filter does have a few behavior issues, which mean that it's not that flexible to use. So we need to have an alternative way, and that's what I want to show you during this technique. But first of all, let me just show you what those issues are. Now, ordinarily, when we're applying a lighting effect, we would add a blank layer and then go to the actual technique itself. In this case, it's going to be the lens flare, to then apply it to that blank layer. But when we do that with the lens flare filter, we get this warning dialog box appear, basically telling us that for us to use the lens flare filter, it needs to be applied directly onto pixels as opposed to in a blank layer like we're trying to do now. So you wouldn't be wrong in thinking that the best way to use it in that case would be to create a duplicate copy of your image so that the original is protected, and then go to the filter menu, render, and lens flare. And this is when we start to notice a few of the challenges in using it. Now, we've got a few different lens types that we can use. We've also got the brightness. But before we go into that, the thing that we have to do with it is to kind of click within this area here and then kind of put the lens flare exactly where we want it to be. And straight away you can see the challenge that that's got is the fact that this area is really quite small. So to get it in the perfect place can be quite challenging. But if we then place it where we think it's going to be and then click OK, If we then want to try and move it using the move tool, we can't do it because it's been applied directly onto the image. So we need to have a much more flexible way to use this, and that's what we're going to go through now. So let's just delete that duplicate layer. Now we are going to add that new blank layer. So I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on Windows, click on the new layer icon. In here we'll call this one Light 1 because we're going to do each headlight on separate layers. Now we know now that the lens flare filter needs to be applied directly onto pixels. So we need to put some pixels into this blank layer. And to do that, we'll go to the Edit menu and choose Fill. And from the Contents menu, we'll choose 50% grey and then click OK. So now we've got pixels on that layer. The next thing we'll do to give us a lot more flexibility is then go to the Filter menu and choose Convert for Smart Filters. That then turns this layer into a smart object, which means that we can then dive back into filter settings later to change them if we wish to. Now that we've done that, we'll then go to the Filter menu, choose Render, and then go into the lens flare. Now, of course, at the moment, we can't see the image directly below, but that's not a problem. The first thing we need to do is choose the actual lens type that's going to be perfect for our headlights, and that's the 105mm prime. So we'll click on that. We'll then take the brightness level down to around about 40. Somewhere around about there will be good. And then we'll click into this kind of relocation area, this really small area, and try to eyeball it so that we go right into the middle of this area. And when we do that, all these little extra sundry bits that we have with that lens flare, they're all going to gather together and kind of pile up on top of each other to go right into the middle so that we end up with one singular bright light source. And that's going to be great for the headlight. Once we've done that, we'll then click OK. That then takes us into our document where we've got the light source, but now we need to move it around, and this is where the magic really happens. We'll come over to the Layers panel, and the actual light layer here, this grey layer, we need to get rid of the grey but keep the pixels for the lens flare, but we want to be able to see the image below. The way we do that is go from normal blend mode all the way down here to one called Hard Light. And when we click on Hard Light, we can see now that the grey has gone, but we've still retained our lens flare. And in fact, with the move tool, we can now click and drag and move it anywhere we want within the image, which is brilliant for being able to place it exactly where we want it. So let me just zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to click and drag with the move tool and put it over the headlight. I can even use the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of finesse it just a little bit more. I think I'll go for there. So now that it's in place, let's just zoom in a little bit further. And you can see now that those areas, that those sundry areas of the lens flare that we all kind of bunched together, here we can see them right in the middle. And for me, my taste, I don't like the fact that they're really, really defined and you can see all the different colour within them as well. So what we'll do now is we'll apply a little bit of blur. So we'll go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. And we don't need to use much. I think around about 7 pixels is all that we need to do. And you can see now how that's taken off the kind of really sharp defined outline of those rings, and the colours kind of blended in a little bit. So if we turn that preview off and on, off and on, that's looking good. So we'll click OK. The last thing I think I'll do on this headlight now is the fact that we do see some remnants of that lens flare coming way out into the picture. We don't need it that far out. So I'm now going to click at the bottom of the layers panel to add a layer mask to this light layer. Now it's a white layer mask, which means we can still see the effect. So I want to hide parts of it now. So I'm just going to get a nice simple round brush. Let's just check in the options bar at the top here. So 0% hardness. The size doesn't really matter. We can change that with the right and left square bracket keys. The main thing is to make sure that we have black as our foreground color. So I'm just now going to increase the size of my brush by pressing that right square bracket key, and I'm just going to paint off the bits going around the really far extreme outside of that lens flare. Something like that'll be good. So now we can turn that off and on, off and on. Now we need to obviously have the lens flare over on the other headlight. So all I'm going to do with that is, in fact, let's just close this down so it doesn't look too much and too busy in the layers panel. Just close that down. And I'm going to hold down the Command key on Mac, Control key on Windows, and press J. And that's going to duplicate this actual layer here. So we go Command Control J to put a copy up onto its other layer there. And might as well rename this one to Light 2. Then I'll get my move tool, click down and drag that across onto the other headlight, somewhere around about there. And again, I can use my arrow keys on the keyboard just to get it just right. I don't want to have too much going on the outside here, so with the layer mask that's already attached, I'll make sure that it's actually active and you can see the frame going around it now. Then I'll go back to my black soft round brush, might increase the size of it just a little bit, and I'll just paint some of that excess away just around about there. Okay, let's just zoom out. It's looking good so far, liking the headlights. That's good. I guess for added realism, those extra finessing little touches there to really lift it and make it look believable, we need to add a bit of light onto the road surface as well, and that's really easy to do. What we'll do is we'll add another blank layer to the top of the layer stack. Let's just hold down the Option or Alt key, depending if you're on Mac or Windows. Click on the new layer icon, and I'm going to call this one Road Surface. Okay, then I've got my brush. I'm going to use a white foreground colour now, and then all I will do is making sure that brush is still 0% hardness. I'm just going to kind of randomly paint some odd shape just on the road surface just there. And then again, we'll go back to using the magical blend modes. We'll change the blend mode of this road surface layer from normal all the way down to overlay. Now, here I am diving into using these blend modes straight away. If you don't know which one to use, it's fantastic in Photoshop now because you can get real-time previews in your picture of what each one will do to the layers. Literally just by bringing your cursor over each one, and you can see in the image how that's making those layers interact. And you see as you come down to overlay, absolutely perfect. I love that one. So we'll click on overlay, and just to tidy up a little bit, to do a bit of reshaping on that, let's add a layer mask to that one as well. We'll go for B with a brush, nice soft brush, a black foreground colour, and I'll just kind of come in here and just shape it just a little bit so it's not spilling everywhere, but just to make it a little bit more realistic. Let's just take some off that side. The light wouldn't be actually coming around the side there. Certainly wouldn't be on the underneath, just there. And something like that is looking good. Let's put all these layers now into a group, keep things nice and tidy. So the upper layer you can see is highlighted, that's active. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the very first layer so they're all highlighted. Then we'll go to the flyout menu in the top right of the layers panel and choose new group from layers. And let's call this headlights. There we go. And now you can see that effect. If we turn that off and on, there's before and after, and before and after. So that's how we can use the lens flare filter to make it look as if we've got vehicle headlights turned on. So there you go. Quite a simple technique there when you make use of that grey layer. I noticed in the comments as well that Richard quite rightly has mentioned that when you are using that lens flare filter, you can hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on Windows, and click within that dialog box to actually input the exact X and Y coordinates where you want it to be. The only reason I'm not put that in is because you first of all need to have your image open with guides to put them in to see where it is, go to the info to find it, then go to the... Yeah, I didn't want to do that. I just found that really with this particular filter, 105mm one for the headlights, put it in the middle, gather it all up, use the grey layer, drag it around. But Richard, you're quite right. That is a great way to find the exact point where you want it to be. So cool. Now, with the lighting effects tutorial, I've obviously written this as well. This I did say 90 pages. I don't know why I said 90 pages. It's 72 pages. But let me give you a look at this. Where are we? Let's have a look at it from above so you can see what's kind of included in this here. You get this with it. This sounds like a sales thing, doesn't it? But I just wanted to show you this, really. You got all the techniques that I've done. I was really in the mood for writing, having finished the recent book. And so I kind of just wrote all this as well, putting everything in. So you got all the stuff that I go through. You get this to download as well. I actually got this printed by Blurb. The PDF did nothing else to it, just used that. And then Philip, 72 is almost 90. Exactly. I like it. So yeah, I kind of got it done by Blurb, sent it away, and then it came back within a week. So I was really, really pleased with that. Not cheap. Obviously, the more you do, the better it is, the more sort of cost effective it is. But yeah, it's another good way of doing it. You could just print it out on your printer if you wanted to and just staple them all together. But it's there. It's a good thing to refer back to. But let's just go through another technique. I've shown this one quite a while back now, But again, it's just this whole thing is a collection of some of my favourite techniques. And this is one that I learned quite a while back now from a good friend of mine called Bert Monroy, who is the godfather of Photoshop. So let me just show you this one now. It's how we can turn day to night. Now, there will be lots of different ways you can do this, as there always is in Photoshop. But I want to show you now my favourite way for turning a scene from day to night, and also adding in some fake light sources as well. So what we do, we've got our image open in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do first of all is create 2 copies of this image over in the layers panel. So to do that, I'm going to hold down the Command key on Mac, Control key on Windows, and press the letter J on my keyboard twice. Now the top layer I'm going to call Night, and we'll turn that layer off. We'll click on the layer beneath it. I'm going to call this one Light. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go to the filter menu, and we're going to use a filter, Camera Raw filter, but to give us the flexibility of making changes later on, we'll convert it for smart filters. So that takes a moment, and then we can see in the bottom right hand corner of the layer thumbnail this little icon to say that this is now a smart object. We'll then go to the filter menu and choose Camera Raw filter. Now all we need to do in here is literally go to the temperature slider, drag it from where it is in the middle all the way over to the right hand side. Okay, so that's all we need to do for now, and then click OK. And like I say, we can always go back to that if we want to later on, because we're using it as a smart filter. Let's just collapse this here. We don't need to see all these little bits underneath. I'll just click on that right arrow on the right hand side. Let's now go to the night layer. Let's turn it on. Then we'll go to the filter menu, choose Convert for Smart Filters. Then we'll go back into the Camera Raw. So we'll go Camera Raw filter, and this time we're going to take the temperature slider over to the left hand side to give us a bit of a bluish tone to the image. But then we'll take the exposure and bring that down as well to create our nighttime scene. So we can go for maybe something around about there. Now that I've darkened it down, let's just reduce some of that blue just a little bit so it's not quite so intense. Maybe there will be good, something like that. And then we'll click OK. And again, we don't need to see this bit underneath the bottom here. We've got the actual filter. So we'll click on that little arrow there to bring that up so it's all nice and tidy and compact. Okay, the next thing to do then is to add a layer mask to the night layer. So I'm going to click to add the layer mask at the bottom of the layers panel. Then I'm going to get a brush, and I'm going to make sure that my foreground color is black, because we want to conceal this blue and dark layer to reveal the light layer below. Okay, so I'm going to press X on my keyboard to swap the foreground and background color. So now my foreground color is black. I'm going to choose a brush, so we press B on the keyboard, and I'm going to go to the options at the very, very top. I'm going to make it 0% hardness for the time being, so we want that to be a light source. And I'm actually going to lower the opacity down to around about 20%. I can do that by bringing my cursor up where the words opacity are. On either side of it now, the little finger, you'll see 2 arrows, one left and one right. And I can click and drag and use a scrubby slider there to change it. But if I know what I want it to be 20%. All I will do is just press the number 2 on my keyboard, and it gives me that. So let me just zoom in. Let's make it look as if this light's maybe turned on. So I'm going to make my brush nice and small using that left square bracket key, and I'm going to press down just once there. And obviously, because it's lower opacity, every time I lift off and press down, it's going to increase it. So it's going to get brighter each time. So a couple of strokes in there. I'm then going to increase the size of the brush so that we start to get that light spilling out. And this is where you can take your time to control how you want that light to be spilling down onto the scene. So we'll kind of get it around about there, and then as we come down, that light's going to be slightly less as it comes away from that light source. So the brightest part, I'm going to click down a few times at the top so it's really intense, and then the further down we go, the less that light is going to be shining down. So let's just spill it out onto the scene just there, and we'll put it down onto the pavement as well, and a little bit on the road, something like that. So there for now is our street light, but what we could also do is make it look as if there's a light in this kind of open doorway here, and then maybe that light is spilling out onto the roadside. So what I'm going to do, while I'm still active on the layer mask for the night layer, I'm going to make a selection within that area. Now I think I might just do this really quickly using the pen tool. Nice and simple. I'm going to click at the bottom, then click again there, click there, and then I'm just going to come around this little arched area. Let's just zoom in. So we'll go click and drag to make a bit of a curve in it. I can hold down the command key and click on this little point and move it so it goes into the right position about there. Click again and drag it up to there. Let's just reposition it. Something like, let's have a look, somewhere about there. And then let's just do another one for the top bit. Just going quickly just so you can show you what we're doing here. Come down a little bit more, around about there. Reposition that one. There we go. And then we'll just click straight. Let's just go straight down. Zoom out. Come down to the bottom. Right down to there. And then go right at the cross there just to join those all up. So now we've got a path that's all the way around there. Let's just quickly turn that into a selection by holding down the command key on Mac, Control key on Windows, and pressing Enter or Return. That then turns it into the marching ants, which we can then go Edit and fill that area within the marching ants with black. And we want it to be completely black because there's a really bright light going on inside there, like that. Let's just go Command on Mac or Control on Windows and press D to deselect. And let's just now make it look as if it's coming out across the roadside. So I'm going to go back to my brush, and I might just harden it down just a little bit, or harden it up rather, just a little bit. And then just decrease the size of it. Nice and small, and I'm going to press down once in that bottom corner, hold down the shift key, come across the other side of the road and click again. It'll draw a straight line for me. In fact, let's just redo that because we want to make sure it's at 100% opacity. So while I'm using the brush, you can see at the top here opacity, I'll press 0. That sets that to 100. So let's just do that again then. So we're clicking the bottom of the doorway there, hold down the shift key, come across the other side of the road and press it down again so it draws a line from one to the other. Let's just do another one in the other corner. So click down, cross the side of the road, hold the shift key down and click. There we go. And then we can do one just up here to join these together. And let's just quickly paint this in like so. Okay, so it looks like the light's spilling out onto the road surface. Now, obviously, the thing with this, if this was for real, you'd get really bright, intense light maybe on the pavement, but as it goes across the road, it's going to get less and less and less. And there's a number of ways that you can actually make it look as if that's happening. So again, we're actually active on the layer mask, so you could get a brush, turn that to a white foreground color, and then we're going to make sure that the brush is at 0% hardness, and then we can zoom out, and then you could really make the brush really big so that just that feathered edge touches onto that little bit just there. So you can see how that's kind of making it fade out. You can see now it's really intense by the pavement, and it's getting less and less as it's going across. That's one way you could do it. Let's just go back a couple of steps. Another way you could do it is just with a gradient. So with the white foreground color, I'm going to press G to get the gradient tool from the toolbar. Let's just go up to the options bar and choose a gradient that we want. We want the basics one. And the one we want is going to be this one here. It's a foreground to transparent. That's really important. Foreground to transparent. So we'll click on that. And then what we'll do is once we've got the gradient, we can then click down on our image, go across to the right, and then release. And you can see now the same kind of thing where it's bright by the pavement, and it gets less and less as it goes across the door. So that's just one way that you can actually turn a scene from day into night, and also put on some light sources as well. Alrighty, so there you can see, like I said, a great technique that I learned from my friend Bert Monroy years ago. And he, like I said, he really is the godfather of Photoshop. And if you check out Bert's social media, you'll see that he's recently shared an image which I defy you to not think is a photograph when you first see it. It is insane stuff. But let me just have a quick look at the questions we've got here. It's got one from my friend Ian saying, when using lighting effects full on, is there any destruction or artifacts in the image? Ian, I would say it really depends what lighting effect you're using, but one thing I have found is that if you're using lighting effects that use a blend mode and you use it on a very, very dark part of the image, you're going to see a little bit of detail being broken down in there. Just a little bit. I mean, you've really got to zoom in and search on it. You've got to be a pixel peeper to notice it, but you know, it's there nonetheless, mainly because of the use of the blend modes. My friend Paul Callahan, lovely man, who's an incredible wedding photographer over in Ireland. He said, this is brilliant, can see me doing this with some wedding images. Paul, absolutely, and it's fantastic that you're kind of thinking outside the box with that. There's a technique I've got as well, which kind of goes through what I call reflective or spill light. And I think my friend Trevor mentioned about it when he saw an image there where I had some light coming under a door a while back, and that's that technique. I've seen that technique used by a wedding photographer where he actually had the engagement ring had a coloured stone in it, and he used that technique to make it look as if light was hitting that stone and the actual light was reflecting onto the bride's finger. Really clever use of stuff. I'll go through more questions as we go through. Don't want to spend too much of your time here, but one thing I am going to quickly mention is that, and this is nothing to do with lighting effects, last week I posted up a new tutorial on my YouTube channel talking about colour grading, okay, and how you can kind of steal, if you like, the colour from your favourite movie or TV programme, add it to your own pictures. Now, the only problem with that was, for some people, oh no, that was the wrong one there, is that it involved Adobe Premiere. Now, if you don't have Adobe Premiere, what can you do? And that's what I want to I just literally put together a real short tutorial to show you something that's not going to give you the exact same result, because the way that lookup tables work, which is what that last week's video was all about, the way it maps onto your images is just incredible, hence why they use them in the movie industry. But I just want to show you a very simple workaround, which I answered in some of the comments that came from that video last week. So let me just dive in and I'll show you that workaround now. All right, so what you could do then as an alternative, here we've got our image open in Photoshop, and here we have the screen grab that I've taken from YouTube. So what you could potentially do is drag this screen grab on top of the image. As I drag it over that tab there to open up this image, if I hold down the shift key, it puts it right in the middle. But what I need to do now is kind of stretch it out so that it does fill the entire space. So then what we'll do, let's just go to the free transform. We'll go edit and free transform. Let's just increase the top and bottom. If I hold down the option key on Mac or alt key on Windows and click in the middle and drag down, it will do the top in the same proportion. So that fills that out just there. And then we can go to the filter menu, choose blur and then average. And what that's going to do is going to look at that particular layer and just mash it up to give us one coloured layer, and that colour is a combination of all of that colour within that picture all blended together. It's kind of like having, I guess, pouring loads of different coloured paints into a paint pot and then just stirring it. This is what it ends up looking like. Then what we're going to do is come over to the layers panel and change the blend mode of this average blur layer to something like soft light. So you can see what it's kind of doing there. If we go back to the normal, that's where we can just see the solid colour. But if we change it to soft light, we can see that it does kind of, I guess you could say, it kind of maps it onto the image. This actually is a technique which is great when you're doing compositing, when you wanted to make the image or the object rather that you're blending into the new scene to match the colour of that scene. It kind of works okay for that, but you know, it does an okay job, I guess, at mapping the colour and matching the colour if you want to take like a screen grab of a movie onto your own picture. But it's certainly not as good as using LUTs, and that's just because of the way that LUTs work, the way that they map themselves onto your image. But if you don't have access to Premiere Pro, this, I guess, is a workaround. Oh, and by the way, you don't need to stay at soft light. You can experiment with hard light, overlay, and other blend modes as well. So there you go, just a quick one, bit of an alternative for you, because I did get a few questions about that in the comment section from the video last week. Alrighty, so there you go. Just a quick workaround that I kind of thrown in there. I can see there's a few people putting some comments in. Great one here from my friend Trevor. He says, can you copy the colours into a gradient map? Absolutely. This is the wonderful thing about Photoshop. There are so many ways of doing things that we can kind of just, you know, see what works best for us. The only problem with that is that you are going to miss out on some of the colours, but it's a great workaround if you don't have Premiere Pro. And also there's one useful here for you folks, again from Richard, who's been a great contributor this evening. Great video here to have a look at called the Bezier game to get more familiar with using the pen tool. You could also get this book, which in chapter 5 is all about the pen tool. Just saying. Just saying. Anyway, listen, I'm going to keep looking at the comments as we go through this. But what I am going to do is kind of just wrap this up. Because like I said, I only wanted to keep this about half an hour, and I really do appreciate you folks diving in, because this is the first one I've done in quite a while. So I want to just finish off with something that I showed a few weeks ago. Very short video. In fact, before I do that, let me just tell you about this before I go, otherwise I'll forget. Lighting effects, the tutorial. It actually goes, I'm releasing it this Sunday at 6 p.m. UK time. All right, and for the first 5 days, I'm just going to do a stupid price for it. I'm not going to be one of these people, because we all see it, your inbox is getting inundated with it when they're sort of saying, listen, I've got a tutorial here for £1,000. You can buy it today, one day only, for £2. It's not going to be a case of that. It's going to be half price, all right? And my prices, hopefully those of you who've known me for a while, you know that my prices, I like to keep them acceptable anyway. So for the first 5 days, we're going to put it out there so you can get it at a good price. And that includes the PDF as well, because I did get people saying, or I did ask people, should I have the two separate? Can you buy the book on its own, or the videos, or two together? So I've decided to put it all together, but the first 5 days, you get it all together anyway for a lower price. Somebody else has just asked then, Mary's saying the name of the book. Mary, thank you very much for asking. I'm very pleased about that. It's called the Photoshop Layers and Selections Workshop. And you'll find that if you go to my website, glyndewis.com, go to the book section. Don't speak to Chuck in the comment section, because he's told me he's had it on pre-order for ages and it's taken a long time. It is. It's the world we live in at the moment. Things have been affected. But listen, I'm going to wrap this up. Ian Munro, can this be what? Ian Munro, can this be done in paint? Paint? Of course, Ian. Of course it can. All right, listen, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to play out with a short video that I played on a live feed that I did on Facebook on the 27th of July. And it was just a short video I did to dedicate to my dear friend Alan Scott, former RAF squadron leader, Spitfire pilot, who would have been 100 on that day. So I'll play that out with you now. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. The technicals seem to work okay. So, yeah, I'll love you and leave you, and keep in touch. Check out the website. Let me know what you think. I'd really, really appreciate it. But I'm now going to leave you with my dear friend Alan. All right, so through the wonders of technology, now that the live broadcast has finished, I just wanted to dive in this replay to let you know that firstly, I can't play out with that video of my friend Alan because of copyright issues. It actually uses some footage from a Warner Brothers movie, which I've overlaid to music. So quite rightly, that can't be played on here. But that aside, during the live broadcast, there was some great feedback coming in, some great suggestions and what have you in the comments section. And that's actually motivated me to show just a couple of extra little things involving the actual lens flare filter. Now, there is a way in Photoshop that you can precisely position the lens flare. However, I didn't think it was kind of the best way to go with this particular technique, because when you do that, it means that all the different parts of the flare tend to move away from each other. And for this headlight technique, I needed them to be all on top to create almost like a layered effect and a bright effect for the headlight. However, it's a great suggestion. So what I've done is I've recorded an extra video after the live broadcast, which has now been put up into the lighting effects course. That's going to show you how you can use this secret keyboard kind of shortcut and click within Photoshop to bring up the precise center for the lens flare. It's really kind of cool. So I've put that in. And also there was a suggestion about using the blend if sliders in the layer style dialog box as well to help with how the light can kind of land from the headlights onto the road surface. Again, not what I originally did in the tutorial because I thought it kind of looked good, but there's always many ways of different ways of doing things in Photoshop, and I just thought I'll give it a go. It looked great. Hey, you know, we all learn something. So I've also recorded how you can do that. That's also in there. But right, that's it. This is definitely the end. I'll catch you next time.